James Webb just confirmed the truth about 3I Atlas. For decades, astronomers have watched the night sky, believing that interstellar visitors, objects traveling from one star system to another, were rare, fleeting, and unremarkable. But in 2017, when Oumuamua sliced silently through our solar system, everything we thought we knew about interstellar objects changed forever. It was not just its speed or shape that defied explanation. It was the way it moved, the way it seemed to accelerate, as if guided by something unseen. Since that discovery, telescopes around the world have been waiting for the next visitor, another chance to peer into the unknown. And then, just a few years later, it arrived. In early 2020, astronomers detected a faint, fast-moving object on an unusual trajectory. It was later cataloged as 3I Atlas, only the third known interstellar object ever observed. But this one, scientists would soon realize, was different. It didn't just enter the solar system like a rock wandering between stars. It came with a signature that was impossible to ignore, a chemical fingerprint that would ignite one of the most controversial debates in modern astronomy. At first, its motion seemed natural. It curved around the sun just as comets do. But then, when the James Webb Space Telescope turned its gaze toward it, something didn't add up. The readings weren't typical for an icy body. The light that reflected from it carried wavelengths that didn't come to match any known cometary or asteroid composition. Instead, they hinted at something metallic, structured, engineered. What followed behind closed doors was a rush of encrypted data transmissions between observatories, space agencies, and deep space research divisions. The Webb telescope, designed to peer into the origins of the universe itself, had just seen something so anomalous that even within NASA, the full results were redacted before public release. Astronomers began whispering of a pattern, a repeating spectral echo embedded in the data, something that looked almost intentional. When analyzed mathematically, that echo corresponded eerily to the same frequency detected in the 1977 WOW signal, the mysterious radio burst that lasted just 72 seconds and was never heard again. For decades, the WOW signal was considered a cosmic coincidence, a fluke, a reflection, a one-off anomaly. But now, decades later, a distant interstellar object was showing a reflective pattern almost identical to that same frequency, bouncing back at the Webb telescope's instruments from a direction eerily close to the original WOW signal's origin point in the constellation Sagittarius. Coincidence? Maybe. But when the Webb data was cross-referenced with archival observations from 1977, the numbers aligned almost too perfectly. The realization began to ripple through the small, quiet community of deep space analysts who had access to the classified data set. The object known as 3I Atlas wasn't just passing through. It was returning from the same vector where that inexplicable signal originated nearly half a century ago. Some within NASA began to refer to it unofficially as the Echo Probe. When the news leaked to a small circle of European Space Agency scientists, they requested an independent verification. The Webb team, cautious of the implications, agreed to a silent collaboration. A full spectrum scan from infrared to near UV, attempting to determine the object's composition with absolute certainty. That's when the anomaly deepened. The Webb's instruments, fine-tuned to detect faint light from galaxies billions of light-years away, detected structured reflectivity, alternating surfaces consistent with panels. Not smooth rock, not ice, panels. The light patterns repeated every 1.7 seconds, a rotation signal as though the object were slowly spinning. Yet each rotation exposed consistent symmetry, impossible for a natural formation. The data review team, composed of astrophysicists, optical engineers, and one ex-SETI advisor, reached a chilling preliminary conclusion. 3I Atlas showed evidence of non-random geometric reflectance. In simpler terms, it wasn't just tumbling space debris, it was built. But built by what, or for what purpose? No one could say. When the Webb-S observation report was quietly handed over to NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office, the language was changed. Terms like structured geometry became possible sensor artifacts. Non-random reflectivity became measurement uncertainty. To the public, 3I Atlas faded from news coverage within weeks. It became just another data point, a comet that broke apart and vanished into space. But to those who had seen the Webb data before it was buried, it was anything but ordinary. In fact, several astrophysicists later revealed that Webb's infrared sensors detected thermal uniformity on the object's surface, as if the temperature was being regulated. No comet or asteroid exhibits that kind of precision. The object wasn't heating unevenly from sunlight, it was controlling its temperature. Whatever 3I Atlas was, it wasn't just visiting our solar system by chance. It had arrived on a trajectory that intersected with not just our orbit, but our history, echoing a signal humanity first heard nearly 50 years ago. And somewhere inside the black data vaults of NASA, buried under restricted access protocols, the Webb's unfiltered readings on 3I Atlas remain sealed, accessible only to a handful of individuals. To them, the question is no longer whether it's natural or artificial. The question is why it came back. When the order came to lock down all Webb data regarding 3I Atlas, it wasn't an ordinary protocol. Normally, anomalies get archived, reclassified, and later peer-reviewed. But this was different. Within 48 hours of the object's observation being flagged, the data servers at both Goddard and ESA's ESOC Center in Darmstadt showed restricted access locks marked Eclipse Priority, a classification typically reserved for planetary defense events or foreign satellite breaches. To the few who had seen the unredacted imagery, it was immediately clear why. In those final data frames before the signal cut off, 3I Atlas didn't just disappear into deep space. It emitted something, a faint pulse, not in the visible range, but in the microwave spectrum. At first, the reading was dismissed as thermal interference from the Webb's instrument calibrators, but one engineer, reviewing the raw telemetry, noticed a repeating frequency buried in the noise floor. When isolated, the pattern was unmistakable, a 3-tone modulation repeating every 72 seconds. It was the exact timing pattern of the WOW signal. Every 72 seconds, the signal would flare, dip, then return, like an echo across time. The difference was that this wasn't coming from deep space, it was coming from a moving object, one passing between us and the sun. The realization hit like a shockwave through the quiet corridors of the data analysis wing. If 3I Atlas was broadcasting, even briefly, it meant one of two things. Either it was reflecting an ancient signal we once received, or it was the source of it all along. A small covert group of researchers, engineers, astronomers, and 2 former SETI analysts, began secretly cross-referencing the Webb data with radio telescope archives. Using the original 1977 coordinates as a baseline, they discovered that 3I Atlas had entered our solar system from almost the same celestial vector as the WOW signal IS origin point in Sagittarius. That trajectory match was beyond coincidence. It was mathematically precise within 0.04 degrees. The data told a story that no one wanted to believe. The 1977 signal, once dismissed as a stray hydrogen burst, might not have been a transmission at all. It might have been a ping, a locator beacon, and now 3I Atlas had followed it home. Weeks later, a classified briefing was held in a soundproof chamber deep beneath NASA headquarters. Present were members from the Planetary Defense Coordination Office, DARPA, and 2 representatives from the National Reconnaissance Office. The atmosphere was grim. Projector screens flickered with the same blurred, grainy stills of the object, its angular geometry clear despite NASA's attempts to blur it. Dr. Ilara Quinn, the astrophysicist who had first identified the structured reflection, was asked to summarize her findings. Her voice, calm but tight, carried the weight of something she could barely process herself. "This object," she said, pointing to the magnified image, is rotating at an exact harmonic ratio of 1.732 seconds per cycle. That's the square root of 3. Not random, that's a deliberate design constant used in wave synchronization. The room went silent. Engineers exchanged uneasy glances. She continued. The reflective surfaces are equilateral, not curved. We're seeing straight edges at consistent angles. That geometry doesn't exist in naturally formed bodies. One of the defense analysts interrupted. Are you saying it's a craft? Dr. Quinn hesitated. I'm saying it's not behaving like debris. It's maintaining surface temperature, it's emitting non-random microwave bursts, and its rotation is mathematically consistent. If it's not a craft, then it's something built to act like one. The officials scribbled notes. Within an hour, the order was finalized. All Webb data pertaining to 3I Atlas would be permanently encrypted and reassigned under the code name Project Lucent. But the secrecy didn't last. 3 days later, fragments of a leaked internal memo appeared on a private astrophysics forum under an anonymous username, GDF217. The memo contained a single line that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Object confirmed to exhibit harmonic resonance with archival WOW coordinates. Thermal regulation suggests active systems. Origin undetermined. It was online for less than 7 minutes before being deleted, but not before screenshots were taken. Within hours, encrypted chat groups among professional astronomers exploded. Theorists argued whether active systems meant internal power sources, propulsion, or something entirely unknown. Some claimed the resonance pattern, the harmonic link between 3I Atlas and the WOW signal, suggested it was a communication relay, dormant for decades, waiting for a signal to reawaken it. Others speculated something far darker, that it wasn't responding to us, it was responding to something else. Then came the strangest event of all. On March 9, 2025, a small radio observatory in Western Australia picked up a faint, repeating burst at 1420 MHz, the exact hydrogen line frequency used in SETI monitoring. The signal lasted only 19 seconds, but matched the same 72-second modulation window seen in both the WOW signal and Webb S3I Atlas data. The observatory staff were stunned. When they triangulated the source, it was coming from beyond Mars, near the orbital trail where 3I Atlas had passed months earlier. It was gone, but it was still transmitting. To some, that suggested a drifting beacon, a device still broadcasting as it moved beyond detection range. To others, it meant something worse, that multiple objects might be involved, forming a network, a chain of signals stretching from deep space to the inner solar system. NASA issued no comment, but insiders quietly confirmed that the Deep Space Network, DSN, began redirecting its antennas toward the last known coordinates of 3I Atlas that same evening. The official explanation? System calibration. Unofficially, Project Lucent had entered Phase 2, a containment effort not to track the object but to decode it. Because whatever 3I Atlas was, it wasn't silent anymore. And the signal it was sending might not have been meant for us at all. By the time the world's media began to quietly speculate on the mysterious silence surrounding 3I Atlas, something far more unsettling was happening behind the curtain of official denials. Inside the Deep Space Network's complex in Goldstone, California, a special off-grid data relay known only to a few engineers had begun capturing bursts of inexplicable interference. At first, they looked like signal noise, spurious energy spikes typical of space-based transmissions. But when those anomalies were cleaned and filtered, a repeating pattern emerged. Each burst began with a sharp pulse, followed by 142 discrete tones arranged in perfect symmetry. It wasn't random static, it was structured. The frequency lay hidden between standard radio bands, invisible to most civilian equipment. But when stretched and analyzed, it revealed something no one expected. A faint modulation embedded within the signal itself. A carrier tone, oscillating at exactly 1.618 Hertz. The golden ratio. In the world of astrophysics, coincidences happen. But mathematics, pure, consistent ratios, are nature's fingerprints of intention. The golden ratio isn't a frequency one finds in space by chance. It's a design constant, recurring in the structure of shells, galaxies, even DNA. Yet here it was, pulsing in the dark, riding the tail of a signal once believed to be a comet's echo. Within hours, the data was flagged and rerouted under Project Lucent. But this time, NASA wasn't alone. ESA, the European Southern Observatory, and the Australian Square Kilometre Array, SKA, were quietly drawn into the loop. Each had picked up similar anomalies, but at slightly different frequencies, as if the object were broadcasting a multi-band sequence, like a musical chord across the solar system. When the frequencies were overlaid, they formed a geometric pattern that defied logic. Each frequency point aligned to a coordinate, and when plotted on a map of the inner solar system, those coordinates formed a perfect spiral, converging toward one point: the Sun. It was as though 3I Atlas wasn't just passing through. It was talking to the Sun. The implications were staggering. If the modulation pattern was a directed transmission, it could mean the object was using the Sun's electromagnetic field as a relay, a cosmic amplifier, bouncing a signal across interstellar distances. The Webb team, still operating under strict silence, confirmed that the object's trajectory wasn't simply a gravitational slingshot. Its course was oscillating ever so slightly, almost as if adjusting itself to align with solar magnetic lines. And then came the leak. On an encrypted European astronomy network, a whistleblower uploaded a series of compressed binary files labeled Atlas Archive 77. Within minutes, astronomers across the globe downloaded the files before they vanished. Inside was a compressed .bin file containing what appeared to be a decoded portion of the 1420 MHz signal. When opened through spectrographic software, the file revealed something no one could dismiss as coincidence. It was an image, not a photograph in the traditional sense, but a low-resolution, interference-encoded grid that, when reconstructed, displayed a pattern of perfect circles connected by thin lines, a design eerily similar to ancient orbital diagrams or the hydrogen atom's spectral signature. The top of the image contained 7 smaller nodes, each surrounded by faint arcs, as though representing orbital paths. But the bottom contained a single large circle surrounded by 3 dots, aligned in a triangular formation. Some saw it as a symbolic message. Others saw it as a star map. But to the few who dared compare it with known astronomical data, something became terrifyingly clear. The layout matched the inner solar system's geometry, not from Earth's perspective, but from a viewpoint beyond the orbit of Mars. 3I Atlas had sent a map of our solar system from its own position. In the following weeks, amateur radio astronomers began reporting something strange. Static bursts at exactly 1420 MHz, the hydrogen line, were being detected globally, even on non-specialized equipment. The bursts were faint, consistent, and growing stronger each night. The problem? 3I Atlas had already passed beyond Mars. Whatever was transmitting now wasn't coming from the object itself. It was coming from inside the Sun's direction. Satellite magnetometers picked up unusual solar anomalies, magnetic wave harmonics that pulsed at synchronized intervals matching the 72-second modulation from Webb's recordings. It was as though the Sun was echoing the object's signal. At the Solar Dynamics Observatory, researchers scrambled to understand it. One of them, Dr. Rena Voss, leaked her personal log entry before it was deleted. Every 72 seconds, there's a magnetic pulse on the Sun's surface, faint, structured, coherent. The data suggests it's being modulated from the outside, not a solar flare, not a CME. It's as if something is using the Sun like an antenna. Those words, never meant for the public, would become the foundation for what journalists would later call the Atlas anomaly. By late October 2025, panic quietly rippled through scientific and intelligence circles. 3 separate agencies, NASA, ESA, and JAXA, independently confirmed that the solar echo was not dissipating. Instead, it was intensifying, and every 72-second burst seemed to increase in amplitude by 0.004%. On the surface, that number seemed trivial, but projected forward, it meant that by December, The pulses would reach levels capable of disrupting magnetospheric stability, the delicate electromagnetic bubble protecting Earth's atmosphere from solar radiation. If those pulses were natural, Earth's magnetic field would dampen them. But if they were artificially tuned, if they carried intentional structure, they could theoretically resonate with Earth's ionosphere. And if that happened, communication systems, GPS networks, and even satellites could begin to fail. Project Lucent began quietly preparing for the worst. Meanwhile, independent researchers across the world started noticing something eerie. When the 72-second pulses occurred, low-frequency radio noise spiked across the ionospheric band. In other words, you could hear it, a deep, oscillating hum reverberating across certain frequencies, particularly around midnight in the northern hemisphere. Social media platforms began to flood with recordings of what people called the Atlas hum. It was subtle, a rhythmic pulsing sound heard through AM receivers, static lines, and occasionally through analog devices like speakers and even old televisions. Some dismissed it as electromagnetic interference. Others insisted it was something else. Then the disappearances began. It started small, isolated incidents. Amateur astronomers who had been monitoring the 1420 MHz range began to vanish. In Denmark, a 38-year-old radio operator named Henrik Malling uploaded a live feed of his observatory's equipment picking up the pulses. At precisely 03:17 a.m., the camera showed a flash, a sudden burst of white light filling his small observatory. When police arrived hours later, the equipment was melted, and Henrik was gone. No trace. Across Poland, Chile, and northern Canada, similar incidents followed. Each involved independent researchers tracking the same frequency. Each vanished without a sign of forced entry, leaving behind melted electronics and static-filled recordings. Forensic analysis of one recovered file revealed something chilling. In the final seconds of the audio, right before the static collapse, a voice could be faintly heard whispering a sequence of numbers. 1420, 72, 1420, 72, 1420, 72, the hydrogen line frequency. It was as if the signal itself was speaking. Behind closed doors, world governments began to panic. The U.S. issued an informal silent coordination directive to international space agencies, ordering them to halt all public observation reports of interstellar objects. Publicly, nothing had changed, but privately the radio silence was deafening. Meanwhile, the James Webb Telescope, still operating under classified parameters, captured something beyond words. As it observed the solar corona, the luminous plasma around the sun, Webb's sensors detected geometric shadows moving across the surface. They weren't sunspots. They were shapes, hexagonal and triangular silhouettes that persisted for several minutes before fading. The objects were enormous, at least 100 kilometers wide, moving in formation. At first, the Webb team assumed it was an imaging artifact, interference from solar reflections. But the shapes appeared again, days later, in multiple frames, from slightly different angles. Someone on the team, a technician named Jorge Alvarez, noticed something even more disturbing. When he overlaid the timing of the solar pulses with the appearance of those geometric shadows, they matched perfectly. Each formation shift corresponded with the beginning of a 72-second pulse, as if whatever was casting those shadows was orchestrating the signals. When Jorge tried to save the composite data, his system locked. Minutes later, the power in the entire Webb operations module flickered. Security logs later confirmed that the system rebooted on its own and deleted all files related to the Atlas alignment sequence. By early November, the world was beginning to notice something strange. Global magnetic fluctuations were causing shortwave radio disruptions, GPS blackouts, and even auroras visible at unusual latitudes. The public explanation: unprecedented solar activity. But those within Project Lucent knew the truth. The sun wasn't flaring on its own, it was being driven. An internal memo from ESA's Solar and Heliospheric Observatory, SOHO, revealed the unimaginable: a faint, ring-like pattern of plasma encircling the solar equator, symmetrical, stable, and unlike anything observed in recorded history. It was, quite literally, a structure of energy, orbiting within the solar atmosphere. If it were natural, it would have dispersed in seconds. But it had remained stable for over 36 hours, pulsing in exact sync with the 72-second cycle. The team's lead scientist described it as an artificial resonance pattern, like a broadcast wave bouncing through a transmitter. And at the center of that resonance, just below the solar limb, faint radar echoes revealed an object roughly the size of Manhattan, the same estimated size as 3I Atlas. It hadn't left. It had merged with the sun. From that moment forward, humanity's greatest telescope, our most powerful instruments and our brightest minds were no longer studying a comet. They were witnessing the activation of something built, something older, patient, and incomprehensibly intelligent. And as Webb's infrared lens caught one final image before its system reset, a single flare, shaped like a geometric symbol across the sun's corona, Dr. Quinn whispered what everyone was thinking, but no one dared to say aloud. It's not leaving, it's waiting. The signal came at 03:17 GMT, a narrow band spike, precise, rhythmic, and eerily mathematical. For years, the data stream from the James Webb Space Telescope had been routine. Solar wind interference, cosmic background radiation, the faint thermal glow of dust trails from comets long dead. But that night, deep in the infrared archives, something new appeared, something that should not have existed. It was emanating from the coordinates associated with 3I Atlas, the interstellar object first dismissed as a fragment of cosmic debris. The same object that had puzzled astronomers since it entered our solar system, showing movements that defied gravity, drag, and every physical model we know. At first, the team at the Space Telescope Science Institute thought it was an artifact, a glitch perhaps caused by the thermal rebalancing process Webb undergoes during solar shielding shifts. But when cross-checked against the Deep Space Network, the signal persisted, unchanged in frequency, steady in rhythm, and clearly structured. Dr. Rena Caldwell, a leading exoplanet researcher, was among the first to analyze it. Her initial reaction was a whisper. It's patterned. It's a sequence. The frequencies formed harmonic intervals, multiples of prime numbers. Nature doesn't do that. Random cosmic noise doesn't sing in mathematical symmetry. As days passed, every major space agency tuned in. NASA, ESA, JAXA, and even independent observatories in South America confirmed the same repeating pulse. But what terrified everyone wasn't the signal itself. It was its origin point. 3I Atlas was moving again. After years of silence, its trajectory had shifted, not due to gravitational polar impact, but through something resembling course correction. It was accelerating toward the outer solar system, and the Webb's instruments caught the faintest shimmer of emitted light, invisible to the naked eye but blazing in the infrared band. That shimmer wasn't reflection. It was energy output, controlled, directed. Scientists struggled to agree. Some called it a natural phenomenon, a superheated fragment venting volatile gases. Others weren't so sure. The energy readings showed sustained emission, not a single burst. The spectrum was too clean, too consistent, as if from a machine calibrated for precision. Then came the breakthrough. When Webb's high-resolution array focused on the object's trailing edge, it caught geometric contours, angular, metallic-like formations glinting faintly beneath the cosmic dust. Dr. Caldwell replayed the enhanced footage frame by frame. Her face drained of color. "This isn't a rock," she muttered. "It's engineered." Across the control room, no one moved. The hum of machines felt deafening. What 3I Atlas revealed next was beyond comprehension. For the first time, Webb detected faint electromagnetic emissions matching the frequency range of early human radio transmissions, as though the object were mirroring us, speaking back in our own electromagnetic language. At the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, analysts overlaid the signal with archived radio data from the 1970s Voyager transmissions. The patterns matched. Every pulse, every modulation, corresponded to fragments of the original Voyager message sent into the stars nearly 50 years ago. Someone or something had heard us, and now it was responding. The revelation triggered immediate containment protocols. Internal NASA memos were flagged Level 4 restricted. A communications blackout was enforced across multiple departments. Any mention of 3I Atlas anomaly was scrubbed from public archives. Yet, leaks began to surface. Amateur astronomers, tracking open-source telemetry data, noticed sudden discrepancies in Webb's observation schedule. Entire windows once dedicated to deep-field galaxy surveys had been reallocated to a single, unexplained target. Independent data sleuths began piecing together the truth. Webb was not just observing 3I Atlas, it was tracking it. And in the last transmission before NASA's data relay went dark, the object changed its course again. This time it wasn't leaving. It was turning back, toward the inner solar system. For days, speculation spiraled. Was this a probe? A derelict vessel? A construct sent eons ago that had finally awakened? Every theory seemed too small, too human. Then, something even stranger happened. On the 14th of October, Webb's secondary sensor suite detected a sudden drop in solar flux, a faint but measurable shadow across a portion of the sun's northern hemisphere. It lasted less than 2 seconds, but in those 2 seconds, the same infrared signature associated with 3I Atlas appeared. This time, not in deep space, but between the Earth and the Sun. In Chile, at the ALMA Observatory, a technician recorded the same anomaly independently. When the data was shared off the record, it revealed a chilling implication. There were 2 signatures, not one. If 3I Atlas had returned, it wasn't alone. And the second object, larger, denser, radiating structured energy fields, was moving on a direct line toward the Earth-Moon Lagrange point. Every major telescope went offline for scheduled maintenance that week. NASA's live feeds went into signal recalibration mode. But those who monitor the deep web data streams knew better. Something enormous had entered our neighborhood. And for the first time in modern history, the most powerful telescope ever built was not allowed to show the world what it was seeing. Yet Webb's final encrypted transmission before the data lock was cracked open days later by an anonymous source. The message was only 3 words: automated, time-stamped, and sent to mission control just before shutdown. It's not alone. The feed went dark after that, and the world was never supposed to know. The moment NASA's servers went dark, a profound silence fell over the scientific community. A silence so deliberate, so absolute, it felt like a crack in the very foundation of open knowledge. For decades, astronomy had been a world of transparency. Every anomaly, every strange signal was shared and debated openly within hours. But after the Webb telescope sent a transmission labeled, "It's not alone," everything stopped. In Houston, Dr. Rena Caldwell was one of the few who got a piece of the puzzle before the lockdown. Alone in her dim office, her monitors looped the last feed she'd managed to download. The timestamp read 03:41:06 UTC. The infrared spectrum flickered, showing 2 energy sources pulsing in perfect opposition, like a heartbeat split in 2. Then, nothing but static. She'd watched it 1,000 times, and one detail screamed at her: synchronization. Each pulse from the object, designated 3I Atlas, was echoed milliseconds later by a second, unseen object. It was a call and response. "Not random," she whispered to the empty room. "It's communicating." Thousands of miles away in Darmstadt, Germany, astrophysicist Lucas Voss had reached the exact same conclusion. Using declassified radar data from the European Space Agency's solar orbiter, he triangulated the second object's trajectory. It wasn't just drifting, it was actively matching the velocity of 3I Atlas. These 2 objects were maneuvering together. Voss couldn't hold it in. He drafted a memo to the International Astronomical Union. Coordinated motion detected in 3I Atlas and secondary object. Possible artificial behavior. Within hours, the memo vanished. His system access was revoked. The official explanation: inconclusive data due to instrumental interference. But interference doesn't form patterns. It doesn't match trajectories. It doesn't move with intent. 2 nights later, a small group of rogue engineers at the Goddard Space Flight Center decided to break protocol. They rerouted one of Webb's archived relay channels through an auxiliary frequency, one not yet under the new tight-lipped command structure. What they found sent a chill down their spines. Buried within the standard telemetry packets, the usual radiation readings and sensor noise, were compressed bursts of structured binary data. At first glance, it looked like gibberish. But one of the engineers, a crypto hobbyist, ran it through a frequency analysis model. The binary resolved into a sequence of repeating prime numbers, just like the signal that started this whole mess. But there was more. Embedded in the data headers was a faint modulation pattern, an audio envelope. Whatever they were hearing wasn't a recording from Earth. It was being sent back from the vicinity of 3I Atlas. Minutes later, the data stream cut off. The lights in the room flickered. The engineer's network access was terminated. And within 30 minutes, 2 unmarked vehicles pulled up to the facility. By morning, every terminal was wiped clean. Dr. Caldwell received a single text from an unknown number. Stop digging. It's already moving. Things started getting weird for amateur astronomers, too. The pilot's radar showed nothing, but passengers filmed a massive, slow-moving structure blotting out the stars. The footage was grainy, shaky, but undeniably real. It showed a vast lattice of geometric shapes gliding silently westward before fading into the upper stratosphere. Within hours, every copy was scrubbed from social media. The accounts that posted it disappeared. But before it was all deleted, the footage reached a private Discord server run by aerospace analysts. They cross-referenced the star field in the video with GPS metadata. The object's position? It was perfectly aligned with the projected arrival path of 3I Atlas. It wasn't just near Earth orbit, it was entering it. By November, the official cover-up went into overdrive. Observatories across the globe announced simultaneous maintenance shutdowns. Data feeds from NASA, ESA, and the Indian Space Research Organization all went dark. The public reason was routine calibration. The private reality was chaos. Anonymous sources leaked snippets to journalists. One leak described a structured object of non-terrestrial origin exhibiting propulsion through non-reactive force fields. Another mentioned localized gravitational anomalies detected between the Earth and the Moon. Governments branded it all as disinformation. But then, reports started surfacing from remote corners of the world. Fishermen in the North Atlantic saw glowing orbs submerging into the sea. Pilots near Alaska reported radar reflections that seemed to bend around their aircraft. And in Chile's Atacama Desert, where the Webb calibration arrays sent their last open data, seismographs detected micro-vibrations, precise, pulsed intervals echoing that same prime number sequence from the original signal. Someone, or something, was building a resonance field. Dr. Caldwell analyzed those vibrations, and her conclusion was deeply unsettling. They're mapping, she realized, not the Earth, the space around it. It was as if this intelligence was scanning the invisible gravitational architecture that holds our world in its orbit. It seemed to phase in and out of different spectral ranges, as if it existed across dimensions slightly offset from our own. It wasn't fully here. Whatever 3I Atlas was, it might have only been a fragment, a probe, or worse, a key. This larger structure wasn't an object. It was an entry point, and it had just aligned itself with Earth. Then, at exactly midnight UTC, a synchronized pulse was detected by seismic monitors worldwide. Not an earthquake, not an explosion, just a rhythmic thrum resonating through every tectonic plate on the planet at the exact same time. Every radio telescope pointed toward 3I Atlas received the same transmission. A burst of harmonic tones, ascending in perfect octaves, with a mathematical precision beyond any natural phenomenon. Dr. Caldwell watched as her computer converted the audio into waveforms. The pattern wasn't random. It formed symbols, fractals repeating geometric structures identical to ancient sigils carved into petroglyphs found all across the planet. "They've been here before," she whispered, "and they're coming back." At that exact moment, one final image from the Webb Telescope auto-downloaded to her system, before the servers went dark for good. It showed a doorway of light opening within the hexagonal structure, an energy void so vast it was distorting the fabric of space-time around it. And inside that void, barely visible, was something moving, a shadow shaped like a vessel, gliding silently into our dimension. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss another story. Let me know your theories in the comments below. Until next time, keep looking up. Start with a low, ominous tone, building suspense gradually. It began as a whisper across the planet, a pulse so faint it was mistaken for geological noise. But then, the atomic clocks, our planet's most precise timekeepers, started to drift. By microseconds, then nanoseconds. Panic, cold and quiet, seeped through the control rooms of NASA and Roscosmos. Something wasn't just shaking the Earth, it was bending space-time itself. From a secure lab deep beneath Iceland, Dr. Rena Caldwell stared at the final images from the James Webb Space Telescope before it went dark. The data showed a hexagonal gate hanging in the void of space, its surface shimmering like liquid glass. As she enhanced the feed, a shape emerged. It wasn't rock or dust. It was reconfiguring itself, shifting its very geometry as if being folded by invisible hands. This wasn't matter as we understood it. It was alive, and it was redefining the space it occupied. Then, on October 29, 2025, it happened. The object, designated 3I Atlas, simply vanished from every telescope on Earth. No explosion, no debris trail, just gone. 6 hours later, NORAD detected a massive shadow in our magnetosphere, just beyond geosynchronous orbit. 3I Atlas was here. It was above us. Instantly, every communication satellite on that side of the planet went dark. GPS systems failed. Planes lost navigation mid-flight. For 12 agonizing minutes, half the world was plunged into a digital blackout. When the systems rebooted, millions of screens, phones, tablets, even offline computers, displayed a single chilling message for 3 seconds. We were never alone. In the ensuing chaos, an encrypted file appeared on research servers worldwide. It contained the classified web data that had been scrubbed weeks before. The images were breathtaking. Inside the hexagonal gate was a sphere, held within an electromagnetic cocoon, surrounded by pulsing, glyph-like filaments. Every few minutes, it flashed a pattern identical to the famous 1977 "wow" signal. The telescope's AI log was even more startling. It classified the signal as intentional communication and noted one final terrifying detail. Signal synchronized to DNA resonance frequency range. Human origin potential confirmed. Rena Caldwell froze. The signal's modulation pattern matched the vibrational frequencies found in our own genetic code. This message wasn't just for us, it was from us. It was. Days later, telescopes in South America captured it, a silent golden pillar of light descending through the clouds over the Pacific Ocean. It left no trail, made no sound. It simply shimmered above the water and vanished. Naval satellites in that quadrant went dead. When they came back online, the nearest ship reported that all its data drives had been completely erased. Only one blurry photo survived, transmitted moments before the blackout. It showed 3 spherical drones hovering in a perfect triangle, the water beneath them glowing with a radiant blue pulse. A week later, seismologists detected rhythmic vibrations from the deep ocean near the Tonga Trench. They weren't tectonic, they were mathematical, structured. Rena and her team understood the horrifying truth. The object hadn't crashed. It had entered the ocean. Satellite data soon revealed an energy grid forming beneath the waves, a network of nodes stretching for hundreds of kilometers. When plotted on a map, these nodes aligned perfectly with ancient megalithic sites. Easter Island, Giza, Stonehenge. A planetary network buried for millennia was being activated. Then on November 9th, the WOW signal repeated for the first time in 48 years. But it didn't come from deep space. It came from beneath the Pacific Ocean, powerful enough to distort our ionosphere. When decoded, the message was no longer a mystery. It was a simple sequence of tones. Return acknowledged. Rena dug deeper into the final Webb data logs and found one last untagged video file. It showed the interior of the gateway one last time. Suspended in the light was a colossal structure, terrifying in its familiarity. It was a perfect holographic projection of Earth. The object wasn't studying us as an observer. It was a creator inspecting its own design. We weren't witnessing first contact. We were witnessing a reconnection. At midnight on November 11th, every radio frequency and television channel on the planet went silent. For 13 seconds, there was nothing. Then a single unified transmission broadcast across the globe. We have returned. The sky above the Pacific erupted in a brilliant hexagonal pattern of light. When the light faded, 3i Atlas was gone. But something new now rested deep beneath the ocean floor, a massive object, pulsing with the exact rhythm of the original WOW signal. Weeks later, divers near Tonga recorded a low melodic hum rising from the abyss. When they sped up the recording, they heard it, human voices, layered in perfect harmony. The final decoded message was simple. We built you from ourselves. The cycle is complete. Dr. Rena Caldwell vanished shortly after. Her last known location, a private vessel off the coast of Chile. An email, sent just before she disappeared, provided the final chilling piece of the puzzle. If you're reading this, understand, 3i Atlas was never a visitor. It was a key. It didn't come here to explore. It came home. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the unknown. If stories like this captivate your imagination, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We have many more mysteries to explore together. Until next time, keep looking up.